Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to analyze the big strategic moves and the financial blueprints of the companies shaping our world, giving you the context you need.
That's right, helping you understand where things might be heading.
And today, we are really digging into something significant, the Microsoft 2025 annual report.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this isn't just about, impressive numbers, though they are impressive.
Roughly, record numbers, in fact.
Right. But it feels like more than that. It feels like maybe the clearest roadmap we've seen for how a giant company tackles, well, the biggest tech shift since the internet itself, the age of AI.
That's absolutely the heart of it. When you read through this, you're seeing a massive pivot happening in real time. The speed, the scale, it's quite something.
Yeah.
Satya Nadella, the CEO, he calls it a generational moment in technology. He says AI is fundamentally changing every single layer of the tech stack.
Every layer.
Every layer, which forces a totally new way of working and a new pace of innovation, especially around infrastructure. And the real tension, the thing we need to unpack, is balancing that huge decade-long vision with, well, hitting quarterly numbers and keeping shareholders happy.
Okay, let's definitely explore that tension. Microsoft's mission, we all know it, empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more familiar stuff. But how does this report, this specific moment, redefine that mission for AI? And maybe more importantly for our listeners, what's our mission looking through this? What should you be looking for?
Good question. I think our mission, and yours as the listener, is to really grasp the blueprint for transformation at this scale.
Okay.
If you want to understand where cloud is going, or how productivity tools are evolving, or even how global capital gets allocated in this new era, well, this report is kind of a masterclass.
Right.
It gives you hard data, measurable investments, showing what it takes to lead in, frankly, a technological arms race. It shows how they're building the foundations for the next tech era, needing both deep insight and just enormous amounts of money.
And speaking of enormous amounts of money, before we get to the sheer scale of those AI investments, let's look at the financial engine making it all possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like you said, even with this huge spending push, FY 2025 was a record year. You need a powerful engine to fund this kind of shift.
Powerhouse doesn't even quite cover it, honestly, the top-line numbers. They would just reinforce Microsoft's position as like a financial fortress.
Okay, give us the highlights.
Total revenue for the fiscal year hit $281.7 billion. That's up a very solid 15% from the year before.
15% growth at that scale is remarkable.
It really is. It shows the cloud transition still has incredible velocity.
And profitability. Because growth without profit doesn't fund massive AI bets.
Exactly. And they delivered there too. Operating income grew even faster, up 17%, hitting $128.5 billion. And the big one, net income, crossed that symbolic $100 billion threshold. It landed at $101.8 billion, up 16%.
So the overall business is not just growing, it's throwing off enormous, highly profitable cash flow.
Precisely, which gives them huge flexibility to absorb those upfront costs the AI build-out we'll talk about.
And the core driver, as usual, is the cloud segment, right? Can you break down Microsoft Cloud and specifically Azure's performance?
Yeah, the cloud is absolutely the strategic center. Overall Microsoft Cloud revenue, up 23% to $168.9 billion. Massive.
Okay.
But the number that really matters for this AI story, the one defining their success, is Azure.
Right.
Azure and the other cloud services hit a huge milestone. They blew past $75 billion in revenue for the first time.
$75 billion.
And crucially, the growth rate accelerated to 34%. That's the engine. That's the high-speed growth vector generating the cash that gets plowed right back into building out global AI infrastructure. The market loves that they're positioning themselves as the platform for AI compute.
Okay, so the business is booming. Let's switch gears slightly and look at the shareholder side. How did this translate into returns? And what does their capital allocation strategy tell us? Because that signals leadership's confidence.
Right. Looking back 5 years, the total return for shareholders as of June 2025 was 255.13%.
Very strong. How does that compare?
Very competitive. It slightly edged out the NASDAQ Computer Index, which was around 255%, and it significantly beat the S&P 500, which was closer to 216% over that same period. So market-leading performance, really driven by belief in their long-term tech bets.
And they're backing that belief up with cash return to shareholders, right? Buybacks and dividends. The buyback number really stood out to me.
It should. It's a very clear strategic signal. In FY25 alone, they bought back $13 billion of their stock.
$13 billion.
But here's the staggering part. They finished their 2021 buyback program and immediately started a new, massive $60 billion program this year.
$60 billion authorized for buybacks.
Yes, and as of the end of June 2025, they still had $57.3 billion left on that authorization.
That is an enormous amount of firepower earmarked for repurchases, especially when you think about the simultaneous spending needed for AI infrastructure. What does that signal to you?
It signals exceptional confidence in their future cash flow. They believe they can fund the AI race and aggressively return capital to shareholders. It's basically saying, we're investing like crazy, but we're making money so fast we can still boost shareholder value by reducing the share count.
A dual message.
Exactly. And they didn't forget income investors either. The dividend saw a nice bump too. Quarterly payout went up to $0.83 per share for the year. That totals $3.32 per share annually, up from $3 the year before. So keeping everyone happy, growth in income, folks.
Okay, now let's get to that critical financial nuance, the one that ties everything back to this AI platform shift. Overall growth was fantastic, we established that. But the report was quite explicit about a short-term hit to a key metric. What did all this AI infrastructure spending do to their cloud gross margin?
This might be the most telling piece of financial data in the whole report. Despite that booming cloud revenue growth we talked about, the Microsoft Cloud gross margin percentage actually dipped slightly. It settled at 69%.
69%. Now, for most companies, that's an amazing margin.
Absolutely. Enviable.
But for Microsoft Cloud, which usually runs in the low 70s, that's noticeable. Why did it drop?
They spell it out very clearly. The decrease was, and I quote, driven by the impact of scaling our AI infrastructure. Even though they found some efficiencies in Azure to offset it partly, the core reason was the cost of the AI build-out.
Let's linger on that. Why is a slight dip from, say, 71% to 69% so strategically important? What's the underlying message or risk?
The significance is what it reveals about the cost structure of frontier AI. Training and running these massive models, OpenAI's, their own new MAI models, it requires a whole new class of hardware. We're talking dense clusters of GPUs like NVIDIA H100s or whatever comes next.
Which are incredibly expensive.
Incredibly expensive to buy, to integrate, and critically, to power and cool. These things generate immense heat. They often need specialized liquid cooling systems, which adds huge complexity and cost to every new data center.
Ah, the cooling aspect.
Exactly. So Microsoft is consciously choosing to eat those massive upfront costs, the GPUs, the power grid upgrades needed, the fancy cooling, knowing it temporarily lowers the profit they make on each dollar of cloud revenue.
So it's a deliberate trade-off.
It's a deliberate strategic sacrifice of near-term margin percentage for what they believe will be long-term dominance in the AI platform market. They see it as the cost of entry, or rather the cost of leading.
I calculated bet. And this cost pressure, it wasn't just in the gross margin, right? It showed up in overall operating expenses, too.
Correct. Operating expenses grew 6%, which sounds modest, but translates to an extra $3.8 billion.
Okay.
And that wasn't just random bloat. It was driven by two key strategic things. First, continuing to invest heavily in hiring top-tier cloud and AI engineering talent, researchers, developers. You need the best minds.
Talent war.
Absolutely. And second, the ongoing costs of integrating that huge Activision Blizzard acquisition they finalized in late 2023. So again, these are targeted strategic expenses aimed at strengthening their position in both enterprise software and consumer engagement, particularly gaming.
Okay, so the financials show they have the money, and they're spending it strategically, even accepting some margin pressure. That brings us to how they're framing the strategy internally, their North Star. Interestingly, innovation wasn't first on their list of priorities. What came first?
Right. They listed three core priorities: security, quality, and then AI innovation. The message is clear. Security and quality are the absolute non-negotiables.
The foundation.
The bedrock. Especially for enterprise customers, you have to have trust in security and reliability before you'll bet your mission-critical operations on AI. Without that trust, large-scale adoption just won't happen.
Makes sense. And given all the cyber threats lately, security is paramount. What specifically did they do on that front? What was this Secure Future initiative?
The SFI. Yeah, it's a massive effort. Not just patching things up. They dedicated resources equivalent to 34,000 full-time engineers purely focused on the highest priority security work across every single product.
34,000 engineers on security work.
It's a staggering commitment. They focus on hardening identity systems, securing network perimeters better, improving threat detection, and really embedding secure by design principles right from the start of development. The goal is making everything inherently resilient against, sophisticated attackers, even nation-states.
And the second pillar, quality. When you're running global infrastructure that businesses and governments depend on, 247, resilience is key.
That falls under their Quality Excellence Initiative, or QEI. It sounds a bit corporate, but the focus is very practical. They created frameworks for more accountability, faster engineering improvements. This means better change management, faster incident response, and crucially, relentless testing of platform resiliency.
Making sure the whole thing doesn't fall over.
Basically, yeah, engineering systems robust enough to, well, run a big chunk of the digital world without interruption.
Okay, foundation secured. Let's move to that third priority, AI innovation, and specifically the physical infrastructure underpinning it all. We saw the margin impact in the financials. Let's see where the money is actually going. What's the scale of their cloud infrastructure now?
The scale is just hard to comprehend sometimes.
Yeah.
They now operate over 400 data centers
400.
in 70 regions globally. That gives them the biggest geographic footprint of any cloud provider. And just in FY25, they added over 2 gigawatts of new capacity. But the real shift is the design. Every Azure region is now designated AI first.
What does AI first actually mean in terms of bricks and mortar, or rather servers and cooling? Why is that label important?
It comes down to density and heat. Traditional data centers were built for standard CPUs. AI workloads, especially training, need these huge, tightly packed clusters of GPUs, which run incredibly hot. Exactly. Far hotter than traditional servers. So AI first means two critical things are guaranteed. One, enough raw power available for these energy-hungry GPU clusters. Two, and this is key, the infrastructure supports liquid cooling.
Ah, liquid cooling again. That's the game changer.
It really is. Air cooling just can't handle the heat generated by thousands of the most powerful GPUs packed densely together. Liquid cooling can. It allows Microsoft to install the absolute cutting-edge, most powerful hardware configurations without them melting. It's about future-proofing for the next wave of even more powerful AI chips.
And they're not just upgrading existing designs, they're making these huge, almost symbolic bets on single projects. Tell us about the Fairwater project. That sounded like a moonshot.
Fairwater, announced for Wisconsin, is exactly that, a massive statement of intent. They're calling it the world's most powerful AI data center, designed, they say, to deliver 10 times the performance of today's fastest supercomputer. 10x. That's not incremental. That's a generational leap in compute power. It signals they plan to have the capacity not just to run today's big AI models, but to train the next generation of truly enormous foundation models, the kind that might require exaflop-level power, stuff previously only in national labs.
Owning the frontier. And beyond current silicon, they're still investing heavily in what might come after AI, right? What's the update on their quantum computing efforts? Still seems very long-term.
Still very long-term for most practical uses, yes, but they're making steady progress on the fundamental challenges. They introduced a new chip called Majorana 1.
Okay.
It's the first quantum chip built with a topological core. The idea is that these topological qubits, based on Majorana particles, should be inherently much more stable and resistant to errors than current approaches.
The error correction problem is huge in quantum.
It's the main roadblock. So if they can scale up Majorana 1 successfully, it's a big step towards building fault-tolerant, stable quantum computers, what they call level 2 quantum. They also partnered with a company called Atom Computing to deploy the world's first operational level 2 machine, keeping them right at the forefront of that next potential computing revolution.
So we have the physical infrastructure scaling massively and looking towards the future. Now let's talk about the software layer on top the AI ecosystem that actually lets businesses use all this power.
Right. How do you make money from all this investment? The main vehicle for enterprises is the Azure AI Foundry.
Foundry, okay.
Think of it as a unified platform, like a workshop, for companies to build and deploy their own AI apps. And the adoption is frankly explosive. They state 80% of the Fortune 500 are now using Foundry.
80%, why so popular?
I think a key reason is choice and neutrality. Foundry gives customers access to this huge catalog, over 11,000 different AI models. You can get models from partners like OpenAI, Meta with Llama, Mistral, even xAI, or you can build your own. Microsoft becomes the essential host, the Switzerland for AI models, running on their Azure infrastructure.
A smart platform play. But while they're hosting everyone else, they're also building their own AI, right? Tell us about their in-house models, MAI-1.
Yes, this is clearly a strategic hedge. The OpenAI partnership is vital, we'll get to that, but relying only on an external partner has risks. So they launched MAI-1 in preview. This is their first big foundation model trained entirely in-house using their own data and infrastructure.
Okay.
They also rolled out specialized models, MAI Voice 1 for realistic voice generation and MAI Image 1 for image creation. This internal capability gives them competitive options and flexibility no matter how the AI landscape shifts.
And speaking of partners, the report heavily emphasizes the OpenAI relationship. Just how critical is that partnership? What does it give Microsoft?
It's often called the crown jewel for a reason. It secures them a dominant position at the absolute frontier of AI development. They're a huge investor, yes, but they also have crucial rights to OpenAI's IP and infrastructure designs.
Right.
And here's the kicker. The OpenAI API, the way thousands of companies access models like GPT-4, it runs exclusively on Azure. You can only get it through the Azure OpenAI service.
Exclusively on Azure. That's huge lock-in.
It is. Plus, Microsoft has a contractual right of first refusal for OpenAI's future computing needs. So as OpenAI builds even bigger, more powerful models, Microsoft is guaranteed to be the infrastructure provider. That's why they need to build things like the 10x Clearwater data center. It ensures they can meet that demand.
Okay, so infrastructure, models, partnerships, that sets the stage. But how do regular users, commercial and consumer, actually interact with all this AI? That's the Copilot family, right? How's the adoption looking there?
Adoption is really hitting mainstream now. Across all the different Copilots, for work, for developers, for consumers, they've surpassed 100 million monthly active users.
100 million MAU. That shows it's becoming part of the workflow.
Definitely integrating into daily routines.
And the functionality seems to be evolving rapidly. It's moving beyond just summarizing text or drafting emails. This agent mode sounds like a significant leap. Can you explain what that is and why it matters?
Agent mode is potentially the next big productivity unlock. It marks a shift from Copilot being just a tool you explicitly tell what to do step by step.
Right, like summarize this, then put it in bullet points, then draft an email.
Exactly. That older model relies heavily on retrieval-augmented generation or RAG finding info and generating a simple output.
Yeah.
If you wanted a complex analysis, you had to orchestrate it.
Okay, so how is agent mode different?
With agent mode, you give it a broader goal. Something like analyze this quarter's sales data, find the key growth drivers, create visuals, and put it in a new report. The Copilot agent then figures out the steps itself.
It breaks down the task.
Yes. It accesses the data, decides which tools to use, maybe Excel functions, maybe Power BI for charts, performs the calculations, generates the text, builds the visuals, all autonomously from that single high-level prompt.
So it's less about giving commands and more about delegating tasks.
Exactly. It orchestrates the multi-step workflow for you. That saves a huge amount of human time and decision-making effort. It's like having a capable digital assistant that can actually do complex things, not just fetch information.
That sounds like the kind of thing that could genuinely transform workflows. And businesses seem to be embracing the ability to customize this with Copilot Studio.
Copilot Studio is taking off. Over 230,000 organizations are already using its low-code tools to customize M365 Copilot. They're feeding it their own company data, building specialized internal agents for specific tasks.
Tailoring it to their needs.
Precisely. And in the developer space, GitHub Copilot is now basically essential. It has over 20 million users. It's moving beyond just suggesting code snippets to actually tackling complex programming tasks for the developer. It's like pair programming with an AI.
Let's make this concrete. The report mentions some specific real-world examples, those aha moments, showing the practical impact across different industries. Can you share a few?
Yeah, the time and cost savings are pretty dramatic in some cases. Take healthcare. Mercy Health System used a version called Dragon Copilot.
Okay.
It automatically documented doctor-patient conversations, something that normally eats up hours of a doctor's day. The result? They saved caregivers over 100,000 hours collectively. One doctor literally said it was the best thing to happen to my practice in 10 years.
100,000 hours saved. That's a tangible impact on burnout and efficiency.
Huge. And you see similar things tackling bureaucracy elsewhere, like a judge in Colombia using Copilot to help analyze cases and summarize legal documents, speeding up due process and cutting through court backlogs.
Wow. And in finance?
Barclays Bank is putting AI tools into the hands of 100,000 employees. Think about accessing complex compliance rules or internal knowledge. AI makes that much faster and simpler across a massive organization.
What about customer-facing uses, reducing operational costs?
Good examples there too. Carvana, the online car retailer. They cut the number of inbound customer service calls needed per sale by 45% using Copilot-powered support.
45% reduction in calls.
Which frees up human agents for the really complex issues. And Ralph Lauren is using AI for conversational shopping, helping customers find products quickly, improving conversion rates. So you see hard metrics, cost savings, efficiency gains, better customer experience.
Okay, those examples really bring it to life. Now let's connect this back to the main business segments and see how this AI push affected their financial performance. Starting with productivity and business processes, PBP, which includes M365, Dynamics, LinkedIn.
Right, PBP was a real growth engine, heavily benefiting from AI integration. Segment revenue was up 13%, hitting $120.8 billion.
Strong growth. What drove it?
The big driver was Microsoft 365 commercial cloud revenue, up 15%. And interestingly, that came from two things. One, continued growth in the number of users, or seats, up 6%. But two, and this is key, higher revenue per user. That strongly suggests people are upgrading to the more expensive premium tiers that include Copilot. The AI is driving higher average revenue.
The upsell is working.
It seems so. Dynamics 365, their business apps for ERP and CRM, also did very well, up 19%. That's important because Dynamics often pulls companies deeper into the Azure ecosystem.
Right, and LinkedIn, still growing.
Yep, LinkedIn continues to perform, revenue up 9%, and they now boast 1.2 billion members globally. A massive professional network.
Okay, next segment. Intelligent cloud. This is the core infrastructure where Azure lives. The heart of the AI race, really.
Absolutely, and the numbers reflect that. Intelligent cloud revenue jumped 21% to $106.3 billion.
21%.
Driven almost entirely by Azure and other cloud services, which, as we mentioned, grew a staggering 34%. This segment is basically a direct measure of the world's hunger for cloud compute and AI services.
And we also saw the flip side of that growth in this segment, right? The decline in traditional server products.
Exactly. Revenue from server products, think traditional on-premises software like Windows Server, SQL Server, actually decreased by 3%.
Okay.
It's a classic example of successful cannibalization. The strength of Azure is pulling customers away from buying traditional server licenses and into the cloud subscription model, which is exactly what Microsoft wants.
Makes sense. Finally, the more personal computing segment, MPC. This includes Windows, Xbox, Search, Surface, often a more mixed bag.
That's a good description. MPC revenue overall grew 7% to $54.6 billion.
Yeah.
But yeah, the story underneath is mixed and very strategic.
How so? Let's start with gaming.
Gaming revenue was up a healthy 9%, but that was mostly driven by Xbox content and services, which surged 16%.
Game Pass and Activision Blizzard.
Exactly. Integrating Activision Blizzard's games and the continued strong growth of Xbox Game Pass subscriptions really boosted that services revenue. But on the other hand, Xbox hardware sales dropped sharply, down 25%.
Console sales slowing down.
Yeah, likely reflecting that we're getting later in the current console generation cycle. So strong services growth offsetting hardware decline.
Okay. And what about search and advertising revenue in MPC? How did AI impact that?
That was a bright spot, definitely boosted by AI. Search and news advertising revenue, when you exclude the costs paid to partners, the ex-TAC number, was up 20%.
20% growth in search ads. That's significant.
It is. And they attribute it directly to integrating Copilot into the Bing search engine and the Edge browser. They saw both higher search volumes and higher revenue generated per search.
So the AI features are actually making people use Bing more or click more valuable ads?
It suggests the AI-enhanced experience is driving more engagement and better monetization within their search ecosystem. The strategy is clear. Embed AI into existing high-traffic products to capture more value from each user interaction.
Okay, beyond the pure financials and product segments, the report spent a lot of time on global responsibility, trust, societal impact. Given AI's power, this seems crucial for their long-term license to operate.
Absolutely critical. You can't lead a technology this transformative without addressing the societal implications head-on. They put a heavy emphasis on responsible AI.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, they state it's guided by principles like respect, integrity, accountability, but they also highlighted concrete actions. For example, partnering with an organization called stopncii.org.
Okay.
They're using Microsoft's AI detection tech to help identify and remove non-consensual intimate imagery, particularly AI-generated abusive content reported by victims from Bing search results. That takes responsible AI from just a concept to actively trying to mitigate harm.
Right, applying the tech for social good. And what about their role on the global stage, especially with geopolitical tensions and regulations like in Europe?
Yeah, managing geopolitical risk is huge for a company this global. They specifically announced 5 big commitments in Europe this year, aimed at bolstering digital stability there.
Such as?
Things like significantly expanding their local cloud and AI infrastructure, ensuring European countries have the tools to compete, and critically, pledging to support Europe's digital resilience and data sovereignty, basically regardless of political wins or trade disputes.
That sounds like navigating a complex regulatory environment, too.
For sure. They mentioned building new internal compliance teams specifically to handle complex EU rules like the Digital Markets Act and the Digital Services Act. It shows they're serious about integrating compliance into their operations, not just fighting it.
Now, a huge part of the societal impact is preparing the workforce. This AI shift changes jobs, requires new skills. Their skilling initiative, Microsoft Elevate, sounds massive.
It is massive. A $4 billion investment over 5 years. That's a mix of cash grants and access to their AI cloud technology for schools, universities, nonprofits.
$4 billion for skilling. What's the goal?
The immediate goal is ambitious. Help 20 million people worldwide gain AI credentials in the next 2 years alone. That ranges from basic AI literacy for everyone up to advanced skills for developers and AI specialists.
20 million people in 2 years.
It's huge. And it's also, let's be frank, a brilliant strategic ecosystem play. Get people trained on your tools.
Right. And speaking of getting people trained on their tools, that free Copilot offer for students seems directly aimed at that.
Absolutely. They announced that M365 Copilot Personal, the consumer version, will be free for 12 months for every college student in the U.S.
Free Copilot for all U.S. college students for a year.
Yep. Imagine the impact. An entire generation entering the workforce already fluent in and likely comfortable with the Microsoft AI ecosystem. That builds enormous long-term demand for their enterprise products. It's very strategic seeding of the market.
Very smart. Okay, one last area from the report. Sustainability. We know AI data centers use immense amounts of power. How are they tracking against their big 2030 goals, carbon negative, water positive, zero waste?
They seem to be making significant strides, especially considering the increased energy demands of AI. On the carbon front, their procurement of renewable energy has skyrocketed. It went from about 1.8 gigawatts back in 2020 to 34 gigawatts contracted by 2024.
34 gigawatts of renewables.
A massive increase. And they're also investing heavily in carbon removal technologies that pull CO2 out of the air. They've contracted for nearly 30 million metric tons of removal, which helps scale up that nascent but crucial industry.
What about the physical waste, all those servers being replaced?
They're doing surprisingly well there, getting close to their zero waste target. They report that almost 91% of their old data center servers and components are now being reused or recycled through specialized circular centers.
91% reuse or recycling. That's impressive.
It is. And they emphasize they're trying to build sustainability into their AI solutions now, using their tech platforms like a planetary computer to help others tackle environmental challenges. So using AI to help solve the problems AI contributes to, in a way.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. This has been a really comprehensive look. We've seen this picture emerge. A company with record financials.
Driven by that Azure engine.
That's deliberately choosing to funnel that cash into a truly generational bet on AI infrastructure.
Yeah.
Spending so much, it even temporarily squeezed those cloud margins we talked about.
That 69% margin figure really tells the story of intentional investment. They're doubling down on the OpenAI partnership, building their own MAI models, scaling infrastructure with moonshots like Fairwater, all aimed at long-term dominance.
And the way they plan to make money from all this is the Copilot family, which is now hitting serious scale, over 100 million users, and getting smarter with things like agent mode.
Delivering those tangible productivity gains we saw in healthcare, finance, everywhere.
It really is an example of that phrase the CEO uses, thinking in decades while executing in quarters. Which reminds me of that question he reportedly asked employees after Azure hit that $75 billion mark.
Yeah, the 15-year question. He asked them, what are you working on today that 15 years from now you will look back on and say, we got it right?
And the answers they cited in the report really show the scale of ambition, don't they?
They really do. Things like access to millions of agents implying ubiquitous AI assistance, medical knowledge has become ambient, a fundamental change in healthcare, and we helped billions become skilled in AI, aiming for global workforce transformation. These aren't just features, they're aiming for societal shifts.
Which brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, our listener. We've seen Microsoft make this massive, multifaceted bet on AI. They're accepting margin pressure, committing billions to skilling, building 10x supercomputers, maintaining a $57 billion buyback war chest. It's an unprecedented commitment.
Truly unprecedented scale.
So the question is, Are these enormous, decade-long bets on infrastructure, leadership, and societal change the necessary price for ensuring dominance in the AI era? Does it build a moat no competitor, especially smaller ones, can cross?
Or does the sheer scale, this massive investment, paradoxically create a vulnerability? Could faster, more focused AI startups, without the legacy baggage or the need to support such vast infrastructure, actually outmaneuver
That's
them?
that ultimate balancing act, isn't it? Scale versus agility, dominance versus disruption.
And honestly,
Yeah.
we probably won't know the real answer, the true return on this monumental bet for another 10 or 15 years. We'll just have to watch how it unfolds.
A fascinating strategic gamble to watch. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Microsoft's 2025 AI platform shift. We'll see you next time.